ELI5. Why is it assumed that life must be carbon or possibly silicon-based? Edited post-flare. I initially have chemistry and then I thought biology, but this is clearly a question of chemistry. Carbon and to a lesser extent silicon have the greatest potential to create large, complex, and stable molecules. In short, those two elements have the most versatility. Life as we know it requires complicated chemicals to store information and energy and to carry out tasks needed to keep an organism alive. It seems unlikely that any life form could be made of chemicals able to do everything needed to keep it alive without those chemicals being based on carbon or silicon. We have a good idea of all the possible molecules that different elements can form. An element that supports life needs to be able to make a massive number of different molecules for all the different tasks that life needs, such as energy storage, sugars, production proteins, and data storage DNA. As other comments have mentioned, carbon is incredibly versatile, which allows it to form millions of different molecules that make life work. Most other elements simply can't form all that many molecules unless you add some carbon-silicon, so they can't perform all the tasks needed for life. There are some very complicated molecules in our body. Molecules are collections of atoms bonded together. We see other complicated molecules in the life we see around us on Earth. Carbon and silicon are both great atoms for bonding into complex molecules with lots of other atoms. We see lots of different ways they could bond with lots of other atoms. So, we are assuming that alien life must have complex molecules like we do in Earth, and we also assume that carbon or silicon must be involved to allow those complex bonds to form. Carbon has 4 electrons, allowing it to bond with the most amount of elements, including itself, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, sulfur and phosphorus. Silicon can bond with the same elements which in general are considered the building blocks of life. Source: I googled it. Due to Earth being the only laboratory that has life, we can only study our own biosphere. We are carbon-biased. Everything we've ever found life-wise has been carbon-based. It makes sense to look for more like that. Carbon's properties make it easy to join lots of different molecules to it, making long chains of lots of different ingredients, like we need for life. Silicon is similar for making long chains, ergo maybe life could be silicon-based. We have limited knowledge on how the universe works and are going purely based on life as we know it. TBF idea that life would not be carbon-based is not entirely dismissed as completely impossible, which is why in both scientific and fictional accounts you often hear phrase carbon-based life form. If we would throw away idea that life could come in non-carbon-based form, it would be just life form or something similar. But we are primarily looking for carbon-based life forms, for reasons other comments have explained better than I could. It's not. There are arguments for it, but every scientist with half a brain will agree that we just can't know all the possible conditions on every planet. We can only look for life as we know it because that's what we know to look for. A pile of rocks on some other planet might be alive, but we could look at it and never know. It's like me asking you to go check the kitchen and count the spoons, versus go check the kitchen and count the schmorbles. You can't look for something when you don't know what it is. Life is complex chemistry. So you need molecules that can interact with everything. That's it. There are no silicon-based life forms. Why? Is it because the size of silicon atom is comparatively larger than carbon? We only know what we know, and we know what's kinda similar to what we know, so we assume we know that too. This really is a nice question, and it seems like we can answer it based on our understanding of chemistry. A similar question but doesn't really rely on chemistry? What if humans could see by echolocation? As far as I'm aware we could have evolved this way and our life perception would be absolutely no different, except we'd be confused how animals could see using light frequencies, and we'd kinda be as confused how a bat can see this way. Just here begging everyone in the comments who mistakenly typed silicon instead of silicon to please edit. The only life we are aware of is carbon-based. A similar molecule to carbon in terms of how it can bond due to the amount of valence electrons is silicon. If there were another idea, it would be life that exists on a premise completely unfamiliar to us, and we would be taking stab-in-the-dark guesses as to what the heck it could be. Carbon, and as a result silicon fit our current understanding. ELI12 Maybe people have answered why carbon is the basis of life. The reason that silicon isn't, despite having the same number of electrons in its outer shell, is because it has one more shell than carbon that is farther away from the nucleus. This means that any bonds it forms are significantly weaker than the bonds carbon forms. Instead of forming bread, it's forming pudding, and pudding isn't strong enough to create all the necessary conditions for life to exist.